Oh, yeah. What is up, everybody? This is Tripp, and I'm here with my buddy Nick Polk. And let's just say, episode 5 of the Rings of Power. It didn't just get one horn of one horn. It's got a multi-horn level excitement. So, are you ready to blow, Nick?
I'm ready to blow right now.
It comes in paints?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Halls of Stone, episode 5, Rings of Power, season 2. And oh man, I want you to know, Nick, uh, I keep getting more excited. I'm just,
Dude. Also, just my favorite episode of the season so far. Like, we've had some action-packed episodes, some really good setup, but this one is it's all, as Kronk says in The Emperor's New Groove, it's all coming together.
I know. And I can't decide if it's my favorite episode or not. Because each one I keep getting more pumped about.
Yeah.
If there was a Tom Bombadil sighting, then it probably could have got there.
I feel like we're at least due for some more.
I know. I want to know how it's going to go down. I got thoughts. They might come out. Who knows?
Ooh.
Who knows? Because I don't know what's going to ultimately get discussed tonight. I do have some like deep thoughts about Numenor and the dwarves that like I want to try out on you.
Yeah.
Be like, if I knew the lore as well as you did, do I have more justification for this?
Ooh.
Or do I just want Tolkien to in the show to have these thoughts on it, you know?
Oh, dude. My mind was all over the lore. I was like searching, looking through. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you want to run this? How do you want to run this? Because last time it went 2.5 hours.
But we had Tom. We added a third person, and when you add a third person, a little more alcohol is involved, and it just keeps going. So,
well, I didn't pregame today, and I didn't send you a extensive email of every Tom Bombadil reference I could come up with. So
that's true. We're also not talking Tom Bombadil.
No.
That's
no. Look, I've decided I'm going to go Tom Bombadil for cosplay karaoke at
let's
Theology
go,
Beer Camp.
Dude. Yes, I'm so excited.
I don't know exactly how I'm going to do Tom Bombadil because I just trimmed my beard. I should have just left it.
I mean, if you just got a blue outfit, I think you don't even have to go that crazy. You could wear, I don't know what you do with the yellow boots, but I feel like people will forgive you if you don't have boots. Oh, let's go.
Why? Why would you not get yellow boots? I got yellow boots. I got to find a hat big enough for my head that I can rock a feather in.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
You could probably, like you said, stay away from, Spirit Halloween and Party City because they're going to charge you $1 million. But you could find some creator on Etsy who will make something for probably around the same price,
Be like, I want to be the eldest. We'll see if I can talk Alicia into Goldberry. I think she's going to look at me like, Tripp, I'm not going to cosplay.
Kelly was like, if you cross this line, if you go dressed up as Gandalf or a Hobbit, she's like, you've crossed that line. There's Comic-Cons and conventions, and I may lose you to them. And I said, I don't know. I looked at her like Durin looked at Disa, and I said, I swear to you, that won't.
But you could win some free books. You should tell her that.
It's true.
But don't you like when I don't pay for the books?
Exactly.
All right. So, I was thinking, I'm going to tell you what happened in the episode as a reminder of sorts.
Yeah.
And then we can go through that. We can just go from there. All right.
Cool.
Hold on.
Sorry, you were like, how do we want to do this? And we I totally didn't answer.
And I was looking at my outline of the show that I then just kept adding. This is what happens. Is then I just kept, like, organizing, and I think I'll just say I'll follow the actual order of the show this time, and then we go by plot lines on Deep Thoughts.
Okay.
But there's there's multiple plot lines, and then they run around. So okay, so it starts opening. We got D3 and D4, and obviously they're hanging out. You got these 7 rings for the dwarves. These little underlings for some other dwarf lords roll up in there, and D3 is just like, look at my ring. Y'all want one of these rings? You get power. You can go like all vibing out. Do you want to have this power? Uh, you can't touch that junk. One of them got all lusty at the blue ring, and he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa! You aren't the lord under your mountain. You're gonna have to get your homeboy up in this piece. Then he can get a ring right after he signs on the dotted line that says, "Half your shit is mine." That's how D3's already rolling up with his ring
Huh.
on. D4, not too sure about this. Well, then, boom, what happens? Oh, let's flash over. Caleb Brimbor and Narvi, they're all like hanging out. Look at this. The door, even though you can see it sketched, but it ain't glowing. Why did we not have a moonlight and have it all hooked up so we could see it glow? Or save the reveal for later when Sauron doesn't know how to get in because he wasn't paying attention? Again, assuming we follow the lore, Sauron's going to show up and not get in, which means he was sitting there thinking about something else. You know what he was thinking about? Why is Celebrimbor hanging out with these stupid dwarves when he could just be forging 9 more rings? And so Sauron, sexy ass Sauron, sitting there with his elf ears and his gold hair, is going like, how am I going to mess this man or elf's mind up? And then he's like, oh, I'm going to lore drop. You know what Celebrimbor wants. He wants to be as cool as the OG elves. And I'm going to, Ariandel, you know him. Your homeboy's daddy who's up in the sky. What about Tor? What about Baron? Look, we can make rings for humans. And Celebrimbor's like, I don't trust them shits. Have you met a human? They cray cray. Dwarves, semi reasonable, probably because the crafting deity made them, and I like crafting. I don't know, but humans are worse. And so it's getting awkward there. It's getting awkward, but not as awkward as the father son relationship between Farazan and Kamen. That is it, Kamen, Keeman? I don't know.
Whatever you want.
All I know is the guy wants to get slapped. We all wanted to slap that little punk last season, but we were like, he might have just have a bad daddy issues like Farazan. We all know what Farazan is. We know what he's made of. He can't produce a good kid. How could someone with a dad that crappy be slappable? You probably just feel bad for him. And then Kamen's like, oh, I need a reason to be even worse than my dad and completely unlikable and slappable because I can't change my face and you just want to hit me. And so his daddy's like, I might have the scepter, but I want more. I don't want to die. I look at this sun and I just think elves are taunting me and junk. I'm not supposed to be finite. And his son asks a semi reasonable question like, you got a scepter. Isn't that enough for you? He goes, no, it ain't. And incidentally, I have a story to tell you about your dead mother. She had a horrible prophecy that she said about you that may or may not mean you're going to be a ring wraith. And we don't know that yet. And I'm not going to tell you all of it unless you do what I say. And I'm going to tell you to do some sketch stuff with your new girlfriend who somehow is went batty and in charge of junk. Well, then you're like, whoa, that's awkward. Let's go to the cool Numenorians. And so Elendil is sitting there with Mariel, super, super tense sexual tension. In Middle Earth, that's third base because you just don't see stuff in third base. She puts her hand on Elendil's chest and it moves down right to his abs, which is Middle Earth on screen, third base. She's blind. He might have gone blind because that's the kind of tension that's there. We're just like, come on, can we do this? And then she's like, look, we got. Don't tell me about all the faithful running around. Don't tell me about the Sea Guard ready to start a rebellion. What happened when you touched the ball? And she's just wanting to ask about his ball vision, like the Palantir. And he's like, well, I don't know. I couldn't tell. I was like leaving town. I had this really cool, different sword than the one I have that might, I don't know, break when I cut Sauron. Who knows how this is going to go? But there's going to be another man that looks as sexy as me when they're dirty with hair like this. And his name is Aragorn. No, that's not what the dream. The dream only had the beginning bit, but he was looking fine, a little dirty, walking away from a city, rocking a new sword because he had to give his up. And she's like, "Look, when you touch the ball, you didn't see a big old wave come here and blow junk up. So let's stay level headed here." And he's like, "I guess since you are queen, even though you don't want me to make you queen again with the sea guard, and you're still fine, even though you're blind." And then, which is sad because she's not getting to appreciate how fine he is. Nonetheless, Middle Earth third base. That is what happened in that scene. Then he has a run in with his daughter, and Elendil runs off to the shipyards, and his daughter Arian is just like there with Kemen, who's like, "Oh, we got to get rid of all these people that might not do whatever Farazan said. We need just yes men, and we need all Kingsmen up in this piece. We don't need anyone. No, the sea's not always right unless you call Farazan the sea. Then just turn your junk in if you can't obey orders." Well, then the Rock, Baby Rock, is sitting there, and he makes a whole scene because he's just like, Elendil, still the man. He's in charge. That's right, our commander. And he's like, "No, I'm not." And he puts his sword down, and it creates that awkward family tension. And right there in the background, Cameron looking a little pissed when Arian walks up to Dwayne the Baby Johnson, and is like, maybe I can help you out here. And he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, that hunky monkey is like all up in your piece. Like you're excited. Like y'all been friends since you were sitting around. You can't go like hanging out with him. You can't go hooking up with him. Why are you giving him any attention? Why do you even want to be nice? I want to find out what the evil curse my mom put on me, so I need you to be mean." And she's like, "But he's got ringlet curls, and we've known each other since we were kids, and he's got a great smile, like Dwayne the Rock Johnson style. And I'm just trying to be nice. It's not personal. I think you have a great face. You're not a complete dweeb with daddy issues trying to like seize power in awkward ways. You're just as much a man as he is, obviously." And so he's got that look, sets up for something weird. Never mind. We go back over. We get hanging out with the elves. Gilgalad gets a letter from Celebrimbor. "Oh, the forge is shut down. Oh, that's good." And then the other elfish leader of the other elfish army, not the one Galadriel's in charge of, is sitting over there in the corner, and she's like, "We got to take the ships to Mordor right now. We got to go get Sauron." It seems really confusing. The only thing that's not confusing is Gilgalad loves his ring. He's not even wearing his other rings now. He's just got one ring. He's not. He started out. He was like polyamorous about his rings. Now there's just one ring for him, and he's just touching it, thinking it, having a little flash forward. Stuff looks awkward, and you're like, "Whoa, I bet things are going to get weird." Then go back to the dwarves. D3, D4. There's some real concerns about how this relationship's playing out. Disa, who is sitting there, and she's like, look, I'm going to need you to promise me you're not putting on this ring, all right? We're not messing with this junk, and we're going to go get ourselves. We're going to go to the market because that's obviously what you do. You go to the market. You see in that scene is where you see the tree, his gifted tree. It's all brightened back up now that you got the mirror lights working again. And so decent, they do some haggling, dwarf haggling over the ball. It's a and we find out D3's been rocking new tax rates. We're talking cray tax rates. It's just like a 1-for-1. He's charging more taxes on his own dwarves than he's charging on the other dwarven realms for giving them their own ring. And all Disa wanted was a little singing ball for some kiddie's birthday. Nonetheless, it falls, it rolls. Somehow this market is right next to a long pathway, and it just kind of goes down, and then there's like a giant pool, and you're like, is this where Gandalf falls when he has a battle with the Balrog later? It can't be, unless it's right next to the market. But then there's something going on in the water. What is it? Is it a Balrog? Is it a Watcher? Like, is it some other beast from below? We don't know. We don't know yet. But all we do know is Disa went down there and her ball broke. And now she's like, D4, you're going to have to talk to D3. There's some sketch going down in there. Next, you go, uh, he shows up during the third. He gets together. He shows up right in the middle of the meeting with all the reps from the other dwarves, and he's like, "Listen, Disa said." It's a long story, but she was chasing a ball, realized you had new tax rates you didn't tell me about. Kind of awkward because, they're going to think of you when they see me, and I didn't even know what they were. Really bad communication, Dad. He didn't say that part, but you could read it on his face. It's kind of like being the vice presidential candidate with Donald Trump, where you don't know your policy, but you just go out and have to deal with it, and you're like, yes, they are eating the cats. So deep. So then he's sitting down there. He goes to talk to his dad, and he's like, "Listen, the junk's getting weird." And D3's like, "What do you mean it's getting weird?" He's like, "Yeah, Disa saw some junk going down in the water when she was chasing her broken ball." Oh, Narvi, this is great news. His dad's not listening. We're going to dig deeper. We're going to get some more. Narvi's like, whoa, we can't even dig there. He's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean we can't dig there? You made rules a long time ago. Screw that guy. That was D3 the gray. I'm D3 the white. And I use my ring and I can see gold. You know how much we haven't taken out of this mountain. I'm going to go get it all. Change the rules. Blow this junk up. Get my money. And everyone in there's like, Narvi, Door in the D4 is like, man, junk is awkward. I bet this turns out well. And then you flash back over the elves. They're sitting there, Celebrimbor, hanging out in the forge. What's the girl, the Galadriel lookalike, Miranda, but it's like Muradana, the one that's a Galadriel lookalike. Sauron's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you got Galadriel hair. Okay, she disappears. And they're like, where'd she go? Turns out she had a ring on. Kind of weirded everyone out. Celebrimbor's got to like go help her get the ring off. And they're like, whoa, how'd this happen? And then she's like, but Sauron said the humans, just like you said, they are they're super even more sketch than the dwarves. We got to put more mithril in this. And Celebrimbor's like, homeboy doesn't know how to forge. Homeboy needs to work on his craft. I mean, Anatar, giver of gifts, but not giver of. He doesn't have drip game on his working of the metals. He's like, this is not how it works. And Celebrimbor is sitting there all confused, and Sauron's like, well, I mean, you could always help. He's like, oh, don't tempt me. And it's like you went to the bar, you're like, I'm just gonna have one, but then it was a triple IPA, and then the next thing you know, you're just like, whatever, let's make 9 more. And Celebrimbor gets really worked up. But luckily, Durin the Fourth shows up, and Sauron wants to go talk to him. Celebrimbor's like, nah, I got this. And he goes to talk to him, and he's like, dude, look, I know I'm just D4. I know I'm just a dwarf, but I think your ring's screwing with my dad's head. And he's like, what do you mean it's screwing with his head? Like, we're perfect. We make this junk. We healed all the elven realms with this stuff. Okay, you might got a great recipe, but somebody was messing with what's in the pot. Maybe it's that Anatar guy. And Celebrimbor's, oh, no. Who would have thought? What are you saying? Like he's like a dark lord full of deception, manipulating me and my ego to get me to undo the wholeness of the realm, making the challenge we're trying to face even worse by having a power to just conquer it and control it. Like, well, that would be ridiculous. There's nothing. I don't know what you're talking around, D4. Your daddy just gave you back your necklace. You need to just be quiet and go home. And I promise this isn't bothering me. Yeah, it is, because then Celebrimbor is getting more emo in this episode. The longer it goes, the more emo he gets, the more Sauron's creeping up Anatar style up in his piece, making him freak out and junk. And that's where you get that bit about the unseen world. Then Sauron has a little sit down with Galadriel Light. And he's like, you got great hair. Reminds me of Galadriel. Great hair. Look great. This is awesome. Love you. Love you. And she's like, you know what I saw in the unseen world? It looked like Sauron. It looked like a giant fire monster or sword wielding crazy thing. And he's like, yeah, I didn't want to tell you. Celebrimbor, he's been having some issues. And she's just like, well, obviously he has. That's the problem. It's him. It's absolutely not you. who has been manipulating everyone to get what they want. That could not be the case. He's like, I know I'm a helper. I need you not to tell anyone. It's our little secret. Um, so hush, hush. You have beautiful hair. Reminds me of Galadriel. Great times, great times. Work the craft, work the craft. I'm nice. And she's just like, sure. I love you, Anatar. Flick forward. You're back in Numenor. There's a funeral. They're sitting there putting some little candles and shells, dropping them off. This is the oldest shrine in town. And Elendil, um, trying to, he thinks his son's dead at this point. Then Smackface comes in, Cameron, and he's just like, "This is that we're putting the aqueduct in here by the orders of Farazan. We're going to be leaving now," and they're all like, "Oh." And then Elendil wants to pimp slap him, and then he gets stopped. He gets stopped by Dwayne the Rock Baby Johnson, and then Cameron just keeps going, and he's and because the priest is like, "Can we just take the can we take a little statue out of the shrine?" He's like, "Sure." Oop, I dropped it. And you're just like, "What are you, a Disney villain?" And he's like, "No, I'm worse than that. Did you ever want to kill Afar? You didn't. You because he's friends with the monkey. You just wanted him to come back around, but you want to kill me." And then Dwayne the Baby Johnson is starts a fight. He's like, "The gods forgive me." Just punches him. Glorious. I replayed it. Just watched it again. I smacked him. Well, then somehow that little dweeb has this muscular Dwayne the Baby Rock Johnson head underwater, but then I guess it was a natural one. That's the only way he got pinned. And then he's just like, "Oh, it's my next attack. Let me roll for initiative." And then boom shakalaka, he throws him up, disarms him, breaks his arm. It goes crunch crunch like Sauron in season 1 when those people in the guild were trying to take Sauron's badge back. And he's about to knife him. And then Elendil's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold out." And you're like, "Whoa, look at this. Elendil, he's obeying his orders from his queen slash potential lover. And not trying to start a fuss." And then what does Cameron do? Straight runs him through from behind. And you're just like, "Okay, good. Now I know I want you to be a ring wraith. I want you to be one that like fails all the time. I want you to be the one that has to go back to Sauron and be like, I didn't find Jack. Look, I'm still pissed. My dad manipulated me. I didn't even want to be here." And he's like, "Sorry, you're wearing the ring, son. You're," and he's like, "I know, my bad. My bad." But all right. So that goes bad. It goes bad, but it's not as bad as what's going on up in Linden. Celebrimbor talks to Sauron, and he's like, "Hey, did you alter those dwarven rings?" And he goes, "No, we did." And he's like, "What? We altered them, remember? You gave a little fib." And Celebrimbor's like, "I guess what we should do is make 9 rings for men, but make them so good because the only thing that can fix deception and a trajectory of destructive power being given to 7 dwarves is to level up and give it to humans who I have already communicated to you I trust less than dwarves." And so Celebrimbor, probably embarrassed, who knows, is just like, give it to him. Now Celebrimbor starts to see this stuff go down. And he's like, hey, assistants, I am going to gaslight you because I'm Celebrimbor. Have you seen my cool hammer on display? Have y'all seen my anvil? Whoops. Yeah, because it almost hit some of you. But nonetheless, that is Celebrimbor's anvil that fell from the sky. I'm Celebrimbor. I store things that if they land on you, you die, even though you're Syria Longeval up in the sky, just to randomly fall. Don't talk back. Work harder. Don't sleep, because that's the way we get quality work done in this piece. We need lack of sleep, lots of pressure, anxiety, and Anatar, my homeboy who I trust and is obviously going to help us fix this situation we created. by making 9 rings for man. That's what we're gonna do. And then Celebrimbor goes up. He puts on his headphones, listens to some My Morning Jacket, feeling real angsty up in his loft, crying. They can obviously hear him, but he doesn't know that because he has sound canceling elf earphones, which it's a lot harder to get sound canceling headphones with elf ears, right? So he's sitting up there, but Sauron gives him a nice little pep talk, and he's like, "All right, we got this. We're gonna rally. We're gonna rally." It's kind of like, never mind. I'm going to pass on that example. I'm choosing better. So then Elrond, who's just been busting a hustle this whole episode, because ever since Galadriel ran interference at the end of the last episode, he shows up in Lindon, having done his little 58K, and he's like, Gilgalad, we got to go to Eregion. And he's like, nah, we don't got to do that. This is a Sauron trick. And you're like, what? A Sauron trick? Gilgalad, you're going to need to chill out. Look, I got Galadriel's ring. You got to listen to this junk. You like rings, don't you? And then boom, we go check out Galadriel. She's like the orc version of Elf on a Shelf. It's like Elf in a trolley. And it's got a nice little orc blanket over it. I don't know why orcs make plenty of things perfectly fine. Why do they have such ugly blankets?
It's true.
They're not even like sewn well. You're like, you can sew. What's your decision to be like, let's use 1/4 the sewing as others so that just lights, who knows? They pull it off. That one orc who keeps showing up all the time with the family and stuff is like, I'm going to steal some of her hair. And Gimli's like, no. Adar's like, whoa, basket. Don't mess with this. And then Galadriel's just like, you want to cut some stuff out of hair, and she pulls out her knife, is about to kill Adar, and he's like, I didn't bring you here to kill you. We're going to be allies. But he said it in Elfish, so those other people don't know what he's talking about. And then you're like, oh, junk. How's this going to go down? Boom, next week. That's what happened.
Oh, yeah. Oh, all of it. I just thought of stuff, connections all across with your, with your summary there. Also, I hadn't even really thought about the Middle Earth third base between.
Well, because there was even all those jokes or like Twitter, like that they had an intimacy coordinator.
Oh yeah,
for the show, and we thought, what is this going to be? Games of Thrones? And they're like, no, that's just when Galadriel rides horses.
Once per season, that's it. Just to sell it, because like I said, too much horse riding. People get a little disenchanted. But
I will say, making an outline on Post-its, and then when you go for a walk, practicing telling the story out loud really weirds out certain neighbors.
I love that, dude. I love that you practice this and people were walking down the street and like, what is this man doing down the street talking about?
A large man with 2 small dogs, and he's talking to himself. Celebrimbor's he must be on the phone.
He's speaking demon language. Celebrimbor. I've never heard of this word before.
What is Galadriel light? It's like, if you can't have the OG, get the replacement. She works in the forge in Eregion.
Oh, her name is Merdania, by the way.
Okay.
There it is. Yeah.
Well, my dyslexic self wrote down Miranda, and I was like, that is not an elf name. But I just called her Galadriel Light.
That's basically what she is, because that's what Sauron does, and he's invoking the lustiness of the past, which some people, I'll dive in because people were like, oh, I don't like this part. Like, this seems too much. Like, what's happening? This intimacy stuff. Ew. And I think people forget, like, especially in Numenor, Lord of the Rings is a different story. But we get Numenor, Farazan and Kemen are supposed to be crazy evil. Like, how Farazan actually took the throne and is way worse than how it actually happened.
But I feel like it's about to get worse, right?
Oh, 100%.
Because
we're at that tipping point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to get worse. We're going to see more of that. But if we're seeing this is like the hinge point where we're going to see, Sauron, so Morgoth lusted after Luthien, okay, in the first age. Feanor in the first stage also uh, had a strong, weird desire for Galadriel's hair, who was his niece. So just some weird stuff, and manipulative, crafty people, including Sauron, get get lusty when they're about to do some evil stuff.
Yeah, dude. Celebrimbor Sauron conversations in this episode are just straight money.
Oh yeah,
Like both of the Charlies, the two actors, are just. I don't know. I mean, like in the first season, it was like Elrond and Durin. With the moment they were on the stage together, you're like, oh, come on. Which I really hope we get another Elrond Durin the fourth encounter in this season. But
yes,
this season, you get Celebrimbor and Sauron, and it's like it's what I was thinking would happen last season.
yeah, totally. I really
Oh,
like. I know because I've got two friends who, we'll talk about. They're two friends that are Sauron scholars specifically. That's what they do, Tolkien studies. And they were like, as they were watching it, they were like, "This isn't Sauron. Like Sauron is way more manipulative." And when they were live tweeting about this episode, they were like, "Okay, here we go. This is Sauron manipulative level up. Like this is where we get." And you can see the transition of Celebrimbor from before, where he was like, "Ooh, yeah, Narvi, the dwarves." Like even at the beginning of the episode, and we get this slow descent into like not knowing who he is. What has he done? Is the evil rings really because of his corrupted lie? Like we just see this weird. I also too, I really like how when you were talking about the speech that he gave, I hadn't even thought about this, but Sauron does this where he represents like industrialization. And what does industrialization do? It exploits workers. It makes people, it doesn't. OSHA would be all up in that freaking place. No helmets, anvils falling, hanging up places, and now Celebrimbor is like full on. He's got the gas going. He's full on exploitative boss, where he's like, guess what? No sleep, no food, and no complaining, like you said.
yeah. One of the things that um, the this episode did really well for the three storylines, like the Numenor one, the dwarf one, the elf one, is it shows uh, that that the way perversity shows up, or the way all three storylines is when desire uh, gets hijacked by
Yeah,
fear. Um, the the dwarves, and there's this coming darkness, and we need power to protect ourselves. Oh, the breaking of the lights and stuff, and like, okay, now we have this kind of fear that's in front of us, and so it lets us say yes to stuff we've never said yes to before. Um, Numenor, the Farazan scene, which he's totally growing into the character. If you have read the book, You Love to Hate. In the I'm not even interested in just having the scepter.
right.
I want more. Like immortality would be nice. Um, and so there are all these limits that are just a part of living that both the dwarves and the Numenorians and the elves find problematic. Even like Celebrimbor's whole thing, he lies to Gilgalad because he has this desire to exceed, right, his predecessors in craft, and he's like, how can I outdo the Silmarils?
Yeah,
This kind of thing. And so like there's a sense that in all three storylines, uh, Sauron's power is to create a situation where their most base desires all of a sudden can be grabbed on to as a solution to the most pressing problem. Like, how can the worst part of me be the answer for the challenge you're facing? And the way this is edited together, and I wonder if that's part of the reason there's listed as two directors, and that this maybe wasn't even all in one episode this
right.
time, but in all three of the storylines, they every one of the baddies has a story where if you heard them tell it, It is for the good of the dwarves. It's for the good of Numenor. It's for the good of elves. And there is someone else in their story, Durin the Fourth, or Elrond and Galadriel, or in the Numenorians, obviously the representatives of the old way,
Right.
where there is a foil that recognizes it as problematic, and that kind of dynamic, right, at historical turning points, is like as like it's what happens in Greek stories. It's
Oh
what
yeah.
happens in the Hebrew Bible. Like in most of the big stories of the axial period, the axial age, where like the this reorientation that happened cross cultures, where the good became something the divine desired to be enacted in the world, and it happens all across the world. But in that point, that led right within Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Taoism, or not Christianity, Judaism, because Christianity didn't emerge yet. But in all these religious traditions, that is when they came to think that an intense part of spiritual formation, virtue formation, is the cultivation of the right desires. And so, what's the big threat to it? Is when you tell a story where your most base desires make you a hero by embracing them. And in all three stories, you got the one that's doing it and the foil. It was just like brilliant writing, because that's literally what happens throughout Lord of the Rings all the time.
Oh yeah.
That's why Faramir got done so dirty in the movies, is because
Yes.
Faramir, Boromir's redemption in the movies better than the book, because we get to see things we wouldn't have got. It's like beautiful moment. It's what all of us like imagined on our best day. But Faramir got done dirty, and it's like, why is the only dignity of the human Aragorn at the end? Faramir in the book shows us the potential of humanity, not just someone because he's got Numenorian descent, but like real deal human could be a
Right.
Faramir. Anyway,
No, it's so good. And just even just thinking how it even gets repurposed and reimagined in new stories, or the way that we tell stories. Even I'm thinking of Oppenheimer, and even before the movie came out, and the way that we've mythologized. I don't know, how do I say that? Mythologized. There we go.
mythologized.
There we go. Mythologized that story, and even how Oppenheimer even mythologized his own work, in real time. And yeah, the writing was just crazy. I'm even seeing like the parallels, because you're talking about these foils, and seeing the parallels between different symbols that look the same with similar royalty characters, like Muriel and the Palantir, and then Disa in her like tuning rock. Right, the Palantir can't really break. It's a object made by Feanor, has all these magical properties, and it is commandeered by the Kingsmen. They're not called that yet, but the Kingsmen, Aarion and Farazan and all that. But then Disa tries to use this tuning rock, which is apparently supposed to enhance her ability to understand what's happening in the mountain, maybe foresee what to do, because she obviously doesn't like the cheating that the ringers are providing, but it breaks, and it breaks in the presence of this roar of, this ambiguous monster. Are we, like you said, is it the Watcher? Are they going to do bait and switch and it's the Balrog, or the vice versa? So yeah, I don't know what's, thinking of the parallels there and these like antitheses, and what, like what are the implications for that? Because Disa is almost like Disa and Muriel are like the Disa is probably more pure than Muriel, in the sense that Muriel had political ambition at the beginning, which cost stuff. After they went to Middle Earth proper, and then Disa has kind of been keeping things going. Well, no, because her ambition too. So I'm just kind of speaking out loud, but her ambition too leads to her convincing D4 to get D3 to go to Celebrimbor, so they can save the mountain, which leads to the corruption and will lead to the downfall of Khazad-dûm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have a question. I want I want to know what you think about this.
Yeah.
So, the stone singing uh, is something that is it's show creation, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Which is also like totally awesome.
Yeah.
Like if you were channeling J.R.R. Tolkien and he was forced to watch this after he got done talking about Brer McCreary, and that he's like, if I could have just listened to the soundtrack, this would have been great. Um, like I would anticipate him going, I love the stone singing. Like it just sounds like a Tolkien thing, right? And we got introduced to it last season, and this season you start to learn more about it, and it is like the archetype of a craft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that stone singing is a tradition that's passed down. It involves a kind of the cultivation through art of resonance with the mountain, where there's reciprocal revealing and knowing, a kind of conscious, even tender and intimate stewardship of sorts to the mountain and to the people in the mountain. Um, and the as that got developed, to then see D3 rock a ring and be like, just stab here, do this junk, and then the dwarves are like, oh, that's a load bearing law. Oh, it's break time. All y'all get out. Um, the ring, the ring changes the relationship of the dwarves to the mountain. The ring does what kind of enlightenment scientific knowledge does, where it
Right.
sees the world as an inert other that you can quantify, understand, and then the what you do with the knowledge is possess it. It turns nature into raw materials, resources, this kind of thing. And the ring takes that relationship to the mountain that Disa's the stand-in for, right? And says, and then Doran the third goes, let's have mechanistic control.
Yeah.
And that movement of turning the mountain as like the uh, imminent presence of life that sustains the people. One where her craft of singing and the whole culture and everything around it brings this harmonious possibility of life becomes possible under the mountain because the people have learned to listen to the mountain and resonate with it. That's how you get this whole place, right? So then this intervention from Sauron destroys this relationship that had built up over time, passed down generation, this big thing. And so all of a sudden, the solution to the problem, the ring, changes actually how the mountain is seen. And how the mountain is seen by the most powerful one, right? So if you are thinking of what's going on here, that the 1% under the mountain has a ring and now no longer wants to honor, cherish the tradition of relating to the mountain, seeing it as part of their life, but wants to perform the enactment, like giving the life and all this kind of stuff, sits up, gives his whole speech and such to the whole people. D3 does that big old speech. But what actually shifted in it is that the leader would rather see the mountain as a possession and an opportunity to gain power and possessions rather than have a dynamic relationship that sustains their life. And so the mountain sees as it becomes wealth unharvested. And in that conversation, you're sitting there where he and Narvi, D3, D4, and Narvi, he goes, oh, we've gotten out but a thimble of the wealth in the mountain, right? And Narvi's like, you were the one that built these controls. And he goes, yeah, there were these controls. There were this integrity. There are these habits. But that was until I had the power to see nature as what it really is, raw materials for my economic exploitation. Um, and that whole, like, so then that desire that shows up in him becomes a desire for control, a control of nature. That is the most Tolkien agenda
Oh yeah.
for thinking about power in nature. But here's the thing I want to ask you here. If I was going to make a proposal to be like, I want to do something about why the dwarf storyline is so Tolkien, Christopher would have endorsed it. Is here's what the ring does with the dwarf story. It is a tool that becomes an agent. What Tolkien insisted throughout, like part of the power of the ring, is that anytime you think of the ring as a tool, then you become its tool. It is an agent. It is an agent, and the tool becoming an agent. But if you don't pay attention to that, it can act upon you, then you ultimately get controlled by it. I think it is taking Tolkien's framework and then giving us a parable for the predicaments artificial intelligence raises. What happens when a tool becomes an agent, and yet you rely on that agent? It is what is made access to more power, wealth, and all these things possible, and you won't not use it because you're worried everyone else will use it. And so there's no chance it's coming off. So just dig here. I don't care if this is a support structure. Look at the consequences of humanity's relationship to technology. Now the earth is dependent upon us. We have a model of extraction that kills the planet and the poor. We have a growing wealth inequality. We have a growing number of people who think the horizon of their kids and grandkids isn't as bright as their own. And yet no one can take off the ring because we thought it was a tool, but it's an agent, and it's controlling us and over-determining us. We have a rise of loneliness, meaninglessness, and all these kinds of things. And yet we're sitting there just like D3 going, I got a ring on. Like, look at this. Look at what it's just but a thimble of what we could do. We could become more efficient. We can have growth. We can have all this kind of stuff. And then what's happening? You have the deterioration of the whole thing. We know it's going to get undone. And I'm just like, recognizing how in each of these storylines and ways with the ring has this shift of becoming a tool, moving from a tool to an agent, is like the perfect Tolkien parable for the kinds of things we're thinking about AI and stuff in the present. It brings together, like obviously Tolkien with the nice Pope critique of techno optimism and naivete being intimately connected to the exploitation of the planet and the poor, and that the logic of neoliberal capitalism is the internalization of demonic energies into the life of the West. I mean, that's straight up the last two encyclicals by the Pope, and it's sitting right there in the dwarf stuff. And like, I'm just sitting there going like, this is freaking awesome. That's what got me pumped. When I texted you and I was like, oh, each of these storylines inspired a rant, and I want to find out if I'm just projecting because I love Tolkien, the new Pope, and Lord of the Rings. But like that movement from agent to tool, nature to resource, all that kind of stuff is so Tolkien and perfect for like the crises we're facing.
Oh yeah. Oh man, everything is just. It's everything you said is so Tolkienian, even to the beginning of Arda in general, or Aya, it's Aya. Is it? I mean, even to the point where it's at the first paragraph or even the second paragraph of the Aina Lindale, where and we've got John in the chat saying he was inspired to start reading Tolkien, and he's on Return of the King. Keep going, John. That's what's up.
He gets the horn.
Oh, yeah, and he's got is it Augustine or Augustine? I don't know.
It depends.
But and I think this kind of connects to which we're jumping into process thought, but there's this bifurcation that happens immediately, right? Everyone, Luvatar sings, and the Ainur are there, and they start singing in harmony, right? Melkor goes off because he wants the flame imperishable, which is the spirit, which is the creative energy that all things have, and you can't possess it, right? And so Melkor's pissed because he can't find it, and so he starts making his own music. And instead of Iluvatar shutting it down, incorporates it into the music, kind of demonstrating like you can't separate those things without, bifurcating or creating this kind of dualism that happens, which turns the tool into an agent, or turns our nature into a tool and then an agent, et cetera, et cetera. And we see the consequences of that, where Morgoth is on this continual quest to take the flame imperishable or seek it, and doesn't understand that he can't possess it. And so he just, as soon as like art is made, it's the earth, right? Everyone's working together to make it, and Morgoth's pissed, so he starts destroying everything because he can't have it. And even later, when we start getting crafts and the elves start coming about and making stuff, we get Feanor, who takes the light of the two trees later, and makes it, externalizes it, right? The Silmarils, and possesses it. And that becomes an agent where it starts moving people to control and take things. And even the Valar, like, want the Silmarils. And to the point where they're more pure at heart, I guess, or just more virtuous, just because of their, Tolkien kind of does the Aristotelian chain of being thing. Just based on their nature, they can resist stuff like that to a better level. But it just goes down. It's the descendants, like the Silmarils, that then goes to the Arkenstone and the Hobbit, and then the Arkenstone goes through the Rings of Power, which we're experiencing now, which goes through the One Ring, which starts off with this good creative energy that all creation has. And then once humanity, or, angelic lower G gods, want it for themselves so that they can create something to dominate and control others, is where the problem is. So connecting that to, unless you have comments, but connecting that to the Disa line and the Dwarven line, is that the best. So Tolkien, the creation of the world happens through song. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the best heroic characters in the Legendarium are able to sing and create music spontaneously. And we see this with, in Lord of the Rings, Sam. Okay. We see this with Bilbo, Aragorn, Galadriel, etc. Right? But then we get to the first age, and we get people, especially the feminine characters. We get Luthien, who is able to sing. She's like the most powerful elf probably possibly ever. Where she infiltrates Sauron's tower and sings it to its destruction, and is able to take down Sauron with her song. And then even when she goes to Morgoth, right, she single-handedly sings him and woos him and uses her power to make him fall asleep, who's arguably more powerful than Manwë. This arguably the most powerful Vala in all of the Legendarium. And Luthien comes in, and because she is in harmony with, the will of Iluvatar, etc., right? She's the only one who's able to convince Iluvatar to bring back a mortal and make him come back after he dies. And I think Disa is kind of the similar character, where she is linked to not just this weird kind of hippy-dippy return to nothingness, right? No shoes, no technology, but with working with nature. She even talks about, like, when she tells Elrond in season 1, she says a rock is like a person, right? A mountain's like a person. This is what we do. We sing to it, so we know where to delve and where we don't, and where we can go to make it beautiful, right? And of course, with this technology of the rings, D3 just busts through everything. So Disa is more in line with probably the original vision of Arda, right? That Tolkien had envisioned and sees as perfect or whatever. Yeah. So,
one of the things you mentioned in the middle made me think of a connection between the dwarf storyline and the Númenórean one. And I wonder, I'm interested in what you think about this, because that when you talked about that, the control element, right, and that part of what you see in Melkor, Melkor is the OG baddie before Sauron. If people didn't, and much of what you hinted at is what happened in the prologue or the big flashback in episode 1 of the season 1, where you see the
Right.
trees and the spider and all that kind of stuff. Where dragons and eagles are battling and all that kind of stuff. Um, but one of the things um, that desire to like seize the fire or control the fire, right? Like uh, the fire and the song or the melody and such in the Anilindale, the creation story in the Silmarillion of
Right.
Middle Earth, it would be much like going into the uh, the creation stories in Genesis and the first one and going like, I would like to control the deep. And you're like, you don't control the deep. Like the spirit hovers over the deep, and then all things get brought into being, right? With this dynamic relationship with this generative chaosmos of the depth and like the gift of life and this divine uh this divine flow that's connected to it, and then everything kind of comes into being there, right? And that picture in Genesis 1, this creation story, is in contrast to the very similar creation stories that the neighbors were telling, where it's like, oh well, some kids kill their mommy and split her open, and it comes out of like death and blood. No, there's like this like uncontrollable, because it isn't a thing, it's an enactment called
Yeah.
creativity. And if you wanted to seize the depths where everything it comes out of, or seize the wind or the hovering of the divine, like those aren't seizable things. Or in the second creation story in Genesis in chapter 2, uh you you could seize dirt, but it doesn't have a name, and you can feel wind, but it isn't breathing. But what is dirt and the breath of God tangled up? An image bearer, a human, right? And so, like when you think of uh, the creation story in the Silmarillion, it has this dynamic that to possess life in both of the creation stories in Genesis, um, require you to read the text so bad that you don't realize they have inherent dynamisms, a depth and a wind blowing, breath of God and dirt. But creation is what happens in the interaction, right? Just like a script or the music and singers, it's what happens in the interaction. Um, and you want to possess it. So like, or even the flame, like you said, like you want to possess a flame. What
Right.
is it? What does that mean? Possess a flame, right? That you don't possess. I mean, you might possess something that is currently being consumed by, but you don't possess the flame imperishable. The flame is an ongoing potentiality between combustible things and air with oxygen in it. That's how it works. Like it's not something you hold. But the moment creation is something you want to contain, control, and own, right? Then the lively chaosmos of sorts of what we actually have in our world, what you see in these creation stories in Genesis, has to disappear, right? And that like desire for control is what is an affront, that no one has complete control, and that you can't become the one in control is what pisses Melkor off to begin with. And he's just like, I'm going to blow this junk up. And then Sauron's like, I want to rule this. I want to give it the proper order. I'll tell you what the real order is, right? Like if the two generations of baddies.
Oh,
Um, but that
I
dynamic there, I just think is so important, because if creation functions where generative possibility and like artisanal wisdom meet, if that's when creation hums, right? Disa singing, um, Sam in his garden, friends at the Green Dragon. Like think of the end of The Hobbit, right? If everyone knew what the Hobbits had figured out, then we wouldn't be so obsessed with trying to go seize all this junk, right? Like Tolkien is full of a reality where if you want to control and seize and own and manage existence, then you're going to miss it. You're going to need some hobbits with int wash to show up to clean out your shire. And I just think this episode of the show made me go like all these things I love about Tolkien are just sitting right there. Like it's giving us the parable Tolkien gives you when you read it. And also I love the bit when you were like, yeah, the cooler you are, the more you sing. And that's why when people tell me their least favorite chapter is the Council of Elrond and Fellowship, I'm just like, you're grounded.
Yeah,
You know,
you are
that's like someone
absolutely
that's like, I
grounded.
love Paul. I got this track that says the Roman road on it. And I'm like, it's neither Pauline, it's a horrible depiction of Romans, and it's a commoditized version of a relatively, it's just a way of dismissing a beautiful doctrine in order to commodify it, sell it, and never call into question your ultimate allegiance to Mammon. So, but nonetheless,
Oh, well, just I won't keep us much longer, but you were just talking about the way that the fire consumes us because Morgoth gets pissed and he just starts destroying stuff. But there's two kind of Feanor, who, if you don't know, he's the OG elf who was in the first age. All the elvish letters that you see, he invented them. Okay. He invented the Silmarils and he created the Palantiri. But his name means spirit of fire. And because of his desire to control and create and possess so much, his soul literally burns his body where he turns basically into ash because his spirit for control is so hot. And then of course what happens to Sauron? He makes his primary means of control in Mount Doom in a volcano, lava. And what's his end? Where he made it from. Yeah. Yeah. Ah, so good. Okay. I love it.
Okay, I want to know what you were thinking about the. Okay, so if people haven't read the Silmarillion, if you only have some familiarity with this, it's not even really in the books at all, but I mean in the movies at all, but in the books you get some bits of like Numenor, Aragorn is long. The extended edition, you find out Aragorn's a lot older.
Right.
But I would like this was the first episode where Numenor's identity crisis of being on an island between elves and normal mortal men in the same sense shows up. And I was frustrated with it not like being on Front Street yet, but I thought it was beautifully introduced. So I'm interested, kind of like tell us what went through your head when Farazan was just like, let me catch y'all up on the subtext of what you've heard so far. And the things we technically know but aren't allowed to say out loud because the Tolkien estate won't let us actually talk about the Silmarillion.
Yeah. No, it's great. Gosh, I wish they could say different names, but they can't. But so right after, the Ainulindale, the creation story, the Maiar, which are like a bunch of spiritual beings. Oh, I'm sorry. And the Valar, also spiritual beings. Valar, lower G god, Maiar being angels or whatever, start creating the world together. And at some point, Middle Earth comes around, Valinor's in the west, and elves pop up. Iluvatar snaps his fingers at some point, and here comes the elves, and the Valar discover the elves, and they're like, we love these guys. This is the most beautiful people we've ever seen. We want them to come to Valinor. So the elves are like, hey, this is cool. Some of them stay. A lot of them go with the Valar to Valinor. And so there's an island that they basically go to a piece of land, and they're like, how do we get to Valinor? We don't have boats. We're basically brand new humans. We don't even know if they have clothes. Okay, and so one of the Valar, his name is Ulmo, who we briefly talked about in the Círdan episode, but he's like the Neptune of Middle Earth, and he breaks off the piece of land, creates it in like an island, and ferries a bunch of elves across the ship or across the sea to Valinor, and it becomes an island off the coast of Valinor. Some elves don't even want to leave this island. They're called the Teleri. They stay. They create a beautiful tower. and it's called Tol Eressëa. Okay, then the rest of the elves go to Valinor. There's an island which basically has a lighthouse, uh, and that's what Farazan sees. And so, at some point, fast forward long thousands of years, Numenor pops up as a gift to men for their work against fighting Morgoth. Okay, and over time, the elves have basically come from Tol Eressëa to Numenor to show them art, how to make food, all this stuff. And then they said, hey, you can't come to Valinor. And for those of you who don't know, Valinor is like so perfect and there's so much like vibrance there that mere mortals who go there will burn up. That's just kind of the metaphysics, whatever. And so over time, with this skepticism and this distance from elvish tradition, because they're like, hey, the elves actually don't want us to go to Valinor, not for our own sakes, but because they want to keep us dead forever. And when Farazan sees this light and talks about, oh, you're on the Meneltarma, which is a mountain in the middle, is a holy mountain in the middle of the island of Numenor, that you can see the light of this tower in Tol Eressëa, which is the island right outside of Valinor. And he's like, that is our symbol. That's taunting us, saying that is immortality, and it's right there. And I think, like you said, he's got the scepter, and he's able to be like, yeah, no, this is immortality is the way to go, and we can seize it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wonder. I mean, they can. And it's clear for Tolkien, like the story of Numenor is his like Atlantis story.
Yeah,
But it's also like a Babel story,
totally.
like the Tower of Babel. So part of what you see here, in that scene, which second watch was my favorite scene after I knew what was going to go on. It is Farazan has even. It's like the moment you get what you want, he still resists his place in the world.
Yeah,
And then, like, what is his place? Like, you have the scepter dad, right? And that's when he's like, literally, got to be the worst dad of all time. And it's, and he also resists finitude. But underneath just even that wrestling with finitude, like the Kingsman in general, right? What does he end up ordering his son to do to prove? Like, don't you want to know what your mommy said about you? Is how about you go destroy the oldest shrine in town? The Kingsman, and you saw this when he talked to Mariel before. He's like, wear red. It's a new start. He has a kind of pride that insists on cutting himself off from the past. The origin of Numenor, why they are the way they are in connection to the elves, cutting themselves off from the previous allegiance, and partnering with the elves to resist, like the domination of the rest of Middle Earth by the baddies, and ultimately, we heard in the last season, right when he was talking to his son, underneath this is this deep desire to have control over men, both
yeah,
their natural resources, the people, and if who knows if the show's going to get as sketchy as Farazan and Numenor under the Kingsman gets, but like we're talking like sacrificing humans to
right.
Melkor, straight up like extortion and slavery with humans.
Possibly
And
some cannibalism too. Just saying,
and
there's hints of
yeah,
cannibalism.
right. And so like this is the moment where his son, who in the next time we see him, is straight up taking out the past, killing and murdering from behind. Like this is the conversation where you see the kind of pride where you're going to cut yourself. You're like, I don't want finitude. I'm cutting myself off from the past. There is no old ways. I see the other as things to control and dominate, be it Middle Earth and men, or things to steal, right? The access to longevity of the elves. Like he wants to control humanity in his own future. He gets pissed looking at the gray in his beard, and he desires life, and he thinks that life is something he can create for himself. Numenor, uh, if it plays out like Tolkien does it, is the lure of self-creation.
Yeah.
It is the downfall of pride, the lure of self-creation. And here, just in this one scene, knowing where it's going to go, he wants no more connection to the elves. Let's put a I ain't putting a ring on it. I'm going to cut that finger off. Right? No more. No more connection to the past. And like, of all the deities to invent having the oldest shrine, it's the god of pity who trains Gandalf. Okay, and once I get done with this, I need you to give everyone the background on is it
Niana.
Nina, yeah. Um, and then he says, let's go for immortality. The crazy thing is, the elves, and in the story, there's a gift of death. Death is the gift of human beings. And this is something, just talking to my son about this. Like, you just have to know, like, fate doesn't mean bad thing or determined thing. It's just like how things are.
Yeah.
So like the fate of humans is death, but it's not like you're fated in some like evil way. And so like the gift of death, he doesn't want that. So like Farazan here, this is the germ of what the gift of death, finitude, location, history, place in a world, structure, in of relations, web of relations, all those things. Like this is what it looks like when you resist all of it. You don't want a connection to your past. You don't want a connection to to your neighbor. You don't want expectations or demands from the outside. You don't want expectations for pity or a claim upon you from the divine. And then you don't even want your own finitude. You don't want your own place in the world. That's actually a threat to your own existence. All of that is there. It is the lure of self-creation is at the very, very bit of this. And if you think through reading Lord of the Rings, what does the ring do? It goes to the person, knows who they are, knows even their own gifts, and then goes, hey, don't you want to dial it up not just to 11, but to 66? Right? Like it takes the own person and then just goes, and um and knowing the potential of Numenorians and their descendants, Aragon, Elendil, right? Like we see here, um, putting it in such a stark contrast, where now we're going to see the past as things we destroy and cover over. See connections as things to leverage for our own end or seize what they have. Like that to me, all the things I love about the Numenor story, like I thought, I feel way better about this plot line because this is my least favorite plot line until this point, and now I'm like, oh, it was like an exhale.
100%. Yeah, like I said, we both, when I remember we talked about Aarion showing up, and she's like, she's an elf, she's a witch, and you're like, what the heck is going on, dude? This is
if
so
she puts
weird.
her on a scale next to a duck with a stick still under the scale, we're in trouble.
Burn her.
What floats?
A palantir.
Glowy ball.
Yeah. I'm trying to return back to what you said. About the self-creation and how, I don't. So Tolkien had this idea called subcreation, and so he develops this concept, which is theological, where it says that in order for humans to create, or any creature to have some sort of creativity, it has to cooperate with the existing creation. And what Sauron and Morgoth and people who are evil at this time is that they believe that they can create, okay, on their own without whatever, and they claim this, but it's a farce. It's and it doesn't reflect what reality is, because without, they can't create orcs, right, without elves existing. Okay, they can't create rings out of nothing because they need mithril. They need all the different materials, and not only can they not just make stuff poof out of nothing, they have to get others to do it for them. And even to the point too where there's only a few times where Sauron is able to fully control people to do what he wants. He has to manipulate and develop a relationship with people first in order to create the tools of control. And so Farasan, is doing this too, where he, which, like I said, the story will be going to a place where he believes that humanity can control their own destiny, but they still die, and they still have to partner with other. They have to make allies in order to get the materials they need, and all that other stuff. In order, they can't just they can't just seize immortality. They can't just sail to Valinor and destroy them on their own. They need all sorts of help. And what happens is that it leads to self-destruction. And that's something that Tolkien always talks about, is that, or at least in his villains are always that people don't have to kill these villains. They end up bringing about their own destruction, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. The other thing I wanted to say before I get distracted by what you just said and send me on a detour is which I'm really interested, like, in the choice for the oldest shrine.
Oh yeah.
Right, in Numenor, to be connected to the god of pity, knowing that we have a potential Gandalf on our hands running around in Rune. But just give the larger context and such for people that don't know, to go like, oh, that just leveled everything up, right? Because they're coming there mourning the dead and such. So
right, it's totally Nienna, right? The only person it could be is Varda, who is the goddess of stars, okay, the Valley of Stars, but it's got to be Nienna. So for those who don't know, Nienna is like the third most powerful Vala queen, okay, in the pantheon of Valar. And so Nienna, and this will connect really nicely to Tolkien talking about subcreation and how fantasy works and how what humans experience in life. And so with creativity, there comes discord, right? There comes the people with desire for control. There comes pain and risk, okay? And so with that pain and risk, or with the risk that leads to pain, leads to sorrow. And so Nienna is this goddess of pity and sorrow. And when Melkor Morgoth, the original baddie, starts destroying everything, starts creating discord, Nienna cries, and her tears get intermingled into the fabric of creation itself. And so, but this sorrow is not evil like Melkor's destruction. So Melkor's destruction is basically in the fabric and the veins of the world too. And Tolkien calls this Ardamard, okay? And so where the world is basically broken until Iluvatar decides to make it not broken anymore. But Nienna's sorrow kind of gets in this intermingled place, and it's a place of like comfort and experience that can lead to joy and relationship. And what happens in Valinor, okay, that's where Nienna hangs out. She had like her own domain, which was actually called Lorien, which is really interesting. But Gandalf was a Maya, which is an angelic being. And his original name was Olorin, okay? And so he used to hang out with Nienna all the time. And it says in the text that Nienna taught Gandalf patience, pity, and that's just where Gandalf hung out. a lot, which is yeah. So there's that, and so Nienna, her tears are co-creative in a way that's not so like at some point Morgoth comes and destroys some stuff in Valinor. Yavanna, who is another Vala, she's like a queen of nature, and so she begins to bless this hill. Nienna's crying, her tears water the hill, and the two trees of Valinor pop up. Okay, and the two trees are like what give light and life to Valinor itself in the first, or like pre. This is like even before the first age. This is like pre first age, and the sun, pre sun and moon. Yeah. So what we see here is that we're going to see the destruction of Nienna by Farazan, because with industrialism and control, there is no sadness. There's this cutting off of motions and humanity and goodness, and I think we're going to see dogs.
Wicket came inside covered in water, so I'm not going to let him run up and jump on people's beds till I dry his feet.
Little Wicket, little rambunctious little guy.
Oh, he is. Okay, so one of the things, like even there, that I just think is really important, is like pity involves, right, solidarity and empathy in lament.
Yeah.
There are lots of visions of divinity, of perfection, of power, where to be moved by the other in their pain, in their suffering, in their lament, in injustice, and these kinds of things would mean that perfection changes in light of reality, in light of the other's suffering or whatnot. And in here you have the element in the sense of the divine that tutors Gandalf is the one whose solidarity, empathy, lament was so deep that her tears are woven into creation. And that like, what does it mean for divinity not to be perfect by not being moved, but precisely by being moved to share in, right? And so when you're sitting there knowing just the stories of a few of the people that are there, but I assume in the show the rest also lost people, right, on this journey to Middle Earth,
Right.
to be lighting the candle, right, and like sending it off into the water, in the before the goddess of empathy, is a way of saying, like, no, at the very base of Numenor on its best days is where you can have confidence to light a candle in your deepest moments of grief and loss and know that your candle corresponds to a tear in the very heart of God. Like, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And that is what gets interrupted, right? That vision. And then if you just take that dynamic, which just set out in this episode, and then go, who are the virtuous in the story of Lord of the Rings? You get the solidarity of Sam with Frodo. You get the pity of Bilbo, which shapes everything. And then ultimately, it's the empathy of Frodo in his relationship with Gollum that enables Gollum, Sam, and Frodo to all three be there at the end. Like, without all three of those elements in Gandalf, Sam, and Frodo and Bilbo, you don't get like the pity that Gandalf learned gets ultimately, expressed in Sam, Frodo, and Bilbo, and then to see right here, right, like this is what's being overturned. Like, where do you stick the aqueduct? Well, if your agenda is self-creation, I want to resist finitude. I don't want to acknowledge my history and connection to the elves. I want to extend the limits beyond myself. You know what? the last thing you want to remind people, even the divine does, is empathy, solidarity, lament, these very things. So let's put that under erasure. I don't know, let Caesar edit the divine attributes.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
render unto God attributes that go to Caesar and then become one. Right? Like anyway, I just thought that scene was so good. Obviously, if you're a process person and all these kinds, my theological proclivities might be pressing it, but I'm just like, this is good.
No, I think it's poetic too. That's where like
I'm
they're
gonna
going
wipe
to
his feet off real quick. I can still hear you, Nick, but
do it. Do
he's
it.
got mud on his feet before he
Wipe
goes to
those.
mommy.
Wipe those feet. Wipe those feet. And Tripp was talking, and I think it's poetic that we were just talking about the industrialization and control. And I think we're going to see kind of this dual thing with the aqueducts, because obviously the aqueducts, when Isildur in Middle Earth kind of opens one up, right? It gets the water going. It helps people. It brings life, right? But what we get here at Nienna, this natural flowing of tears, which is water, is replaced by this industrial, mechanism of an aqueduct. It's really poetic that those correspond with each other. It seems really, really well. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just saying, Nick, that junk is so good. Like, there's nothing about the text that makes you go, oh, like of all the different deities you're gonna put, running around with the oldest one. But if you're going to, for this story, which one do you think Tolkien would be like? Oh, I got an idea. It makes all I know is that you may have thought something different. I'm sure there are versions you could put up with a lot of them. Like maybe you do Ale, and there's like this contrast between the Kingsmen and the Faithful, and then it goes to like D3, D4 contrast with Disa. And you could have done that, and it would have been great. But just knowing Tolkien and then no one creates this that doesn't love the things I love about Tolkien. Like,
well, and it's perfect with the lore. It had symbol, right? That there's empathy and compassion, even with Baby Rock, Valandil, I think is his name, and then Elendil, right? As soon as Nienna
Baby
gets
the Rock
smashed,
Johnson?
Baby the Rock Johnson, as soon as the statue of Nienna, okay, we don't know for sure, but Nienna, what happens? Elendil punches him in the face. Valandil goes full fight mode, and Valandil dies. Yeah.
Oh, that junk is great. Okay, so are there any specific things about this episode else you wanted to say? Because I have a macro question, but I can't remember what we haven't talked about.
I think there's a symbol or call back to Peter Jackson, because I think it's very Tolkienian, but they put it in the wrong place in the
Uh-oh. You just froze. Oh, Nick. All right, Nick. You're frozen or I'm frozen. But I'll give you a second. You can hear me and see you still. I can hear you and see you still. You're frozen. You're frozen, Nick. Try coming out and coming back in. Use the same link. And then I might get to tell everyone something exciting. All right. Well, okay. I'll tell y'all something Nick is working on. And that if you're coming or after it, we'll share it with you to Theology Beer Camp. We're in the process of working on a Tolkien liturgy, where we're going to occupy the mythopoetic structure of the legendarium, and one night at Theology Beer Camp, we got like passages and stuff from the legendarium, its imagery and language and stuff. We're going to use it to reflect on existence. And while it's taking place, we got some high quality toast, maybe some singing of songs related to the Green Dragon. We have cigars with sweet Lord of the Ring unique art, and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to happen. We're excited about it. It appears Nick's internet went out, so we're going to see how this goes. But the other thing, Tolkien related at the Algebra Camp, is Brian Zahn, Craig Boyd, who've both been on the podcast before and joined us for different Tolkien Head related things, are going to be there, and we're going to have a special session there, and like, who doesn't want to see what happens when Brian's on? Who talks about the ring, power, corruption in his new book, and Craig Boyd, who has been writing and working in Tolkien studies for a while, looking at virtue ethics and all that kind of stuff. They're going to be there. We're going to undo that, dig into that. Kevin Max from DC Talk is going to be there. We're going to see if we can talk him into doing his Tolkien cover song. I mean, not a cover song of Tolkien, but from the Hobbit movie, the adventure song in the Hobbit cartoon. And opening night karaoke, cosplay karaoke. Ooh, Nick's back.
Okay, hold on. Let me reconnect here. For some reason, my router just glitched.
Watch out. And now I'm echoing in you.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get my headphones to connect.
Ooh.
Oh, that's why.
Well, by the time I edit this, none of this will have happened.
Sorry. Editing problems. What the heck, man?
I don't know, Nick.
Hold on. I might have to go less quality audio.
Uh-oh. I personally like the fact that you have lights over your head, and unless you're close to your camera, you're a shadow. Ooh.
Is this a thing? Or am I still echoing?
No, you're not echoing. You're
Okay.
not echoing.
How's
there
my
we go.
audio sound? Does it sound bad? I mean,
No, it's fine.
Okay. Am I turning into a ring wraith?
Not yet. Not yet. Oh, but now I can't hear you. Switch your mic back to whatever it was on. The real question is, there's still 185 people sitting on this stream while we're having technical difficulties.
How's that? Is that better or not really? Is it?
I'm echoing.
God dang it, dude. What about that?
No, I'm louder than you.
What about this?
Boo. Oh, I don't hear me now.
Okay.
All right.
No echoes.
You got more of a gamer vibe. And I completely forgot. I just started talking about beer camp, and then, but there was something I was going to ask you.
I was pissed because I was answering. Oh, the macro thing. Why don't you just head to the macro thing?
Oh yeah, I was going to ask a macro question, which is good because I'm trying to remember what it was. No, but what was it you were answering when you died?
So I had thought about what they did thematically with the Peter. They made like an homage to Peter Jackson as they've done, and I think that what they did with this in this episode in particular, I think fits a lot better in this context. So in the Peter Jackson films, they had Gollum manipulate Frodo into hating Sam, right, when they're at the stairs at Cirith Ungol, or no, those aren't. That's not Cirith Ungol, but the stairs over there to go into Shelob's lair. It makes it kind of also one of those like weird moments where like that wouldn't happen, right? Frodo and Sam, that wouldn't happen. But the way that that Gollum uses the manipulation is very Tolkienian in the way that like villains do that, and we see that with Sauron and Celebrimbor, okay, and we see that with Farazan and Kemen, right, where Farazan's absolutely manipulating Kemen in the worst way possible, and also Sauron doing what Sauron does. But anyway, I thought that was a kind of like an homage, really, to the way that Frodo and Sam get that whole love triangle between them happens, and it doesn't work in Peter Jackson, but it really worked in this episode, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Dig it. Dig it, Nick. Okay, so here's the macro question. If this is like, isn't it supposed to be like 5 seasons?
Yeah.
We just had the turning point in the middle of the second season, and I just am thinking to myself, do you know how, like, if they land this plane, which landing a plane on a 3-episode battle when they got the budget they have and everything battle related this season, and now that you can have extras because it's not filmed in COVID, is doing what it's doing.
Right.
Like, I'm anticipating like really sweet fights, like Galadriel when she just went chasing down the orcs and was just like Legolas, hold my ring because watch this junk. They, it's gonna. I'm anticipating strong finish here. The
And
amount of hype I'm going to have going into season 3 is going to be annoying to my loved ones because like I'm like, oh, junk, that's Tom Bombadil. Then you got Celebrimbor, Sauron, corruption stuff going down. We've already seen hints of him becoming Celebrimbor becoming his banner man on a tree. So this junk's gonna get real. Um, the dwarf line, Numenor line, both of those are just like straight up like thematically Tolkien AF. And I'm just like, if this season's going like it's going, and I have to wait 2 years, the amount of hype that's going to be going through my body. Also, I thought if it's 2 years for every season, I'm going to be 50
by the time it's finished.
by the time it's done. I'm going to be 50. That was the other thought I had.
I mean, that's like Stranger Things, dude. Stranger Things has been like that. I think it came out like 2014 or 15. Yeah, insane.
Yeah. But are you feeling like when you got like a Bombadil episode, you're like, "Oh," and then this junk, you're like, I feel like I'm just getting pumped.
Well, and I keep saying, I keep seeing rather these articles that keep saying like, "Oh, guess what? The battle you've been waiting for is coming." You know, and we've talked about like, of course, like it's not all about action. Like some of the critiques that people had of Peter Jackson's films, they were like, "What is this? Action movie for teenage boys?" You know, and it's like the majority of the movie is people walking. Like I don't know what you're complaining about. Like that's like and we've got all that like we've talked about. Like I love the slow episodes where we get to build relationships with people and just all these things and get the nerdy background. But we can have cool battles too. And also, I'm just gonna say, if I mean the Helm's Deep battle and the battle at Minas Tirith were filmed in the 90s and like digitally mastered in the late 90s and early 2000s. And if we don't get a $2024 billion battle, I'm gonna be pissed.
We're doing it wrong.
Yeah, which I'm hyped right now. So, like you said, I have high hopes because we've already seen kind of the previews with Damrod and freaking Arondir. So,
Yeah. In the full flashback to the first stage, there were eagles flying and battling dragons, and
Right.
the dragons look cooler than House of Dragon dragons.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm just like, maybe we should be a little loose with the lore and put some more dragons in this battle.
I'm
Like,
ready.
would you just as a flex? Just as a flex.
I mean, we've got mudworms. We can get dragons.
Yeah, like who needs a mudworm when you got dragons? Oh no, I'm excited, and at some point there's gonna be a song for Damrod, metal screaming, drums ablazing, and Gilgalad's gonna be like, "Son, look, you didn't want to do this. You didn't want to do this."
I'm so glad we do these live streams on Monday because if we had if we did these like right after the episode or on Friday or something, I'd be like, oh my God, just give me the episode. But I'm like, tomorrow's Tuesday. It's going to be here before I know it, but I need it.
I know. I'm just thinking, can we just stop dropping 3 episodes at once?
Yeah, literally.
Like they like when you even look at the numbers on Amazon, like, oh, there's a whole bunch of people that watched it, and then everyone was like telling their friends like, oh, this is good. So then more people started watching it. Then episode 4 comes out, and then it's like all this energy catching up. I'm like, well, like, can't y'all just like wrap up this mega battle, leave like a what the hell's about to happen next thing, and then just do 1 episode each time next season, so we get 2 months of Rings of Power?
Literally.
Because I mean, we haven't even podcasted that many times, and we're already halfway done, past halfway.
I know, past halfway. We have 3 more episodes. What the heck?
Jeez. Come on, Bezos. If you're going to do a 3-episode drop, we'll compromise. 12-episode seasons.
12 episodes here. We'll compromise with you. Give us a deal. We'll be writers.
Don't tell me you don't have money. Or, I mean, I bet this is not being saved. This is going to be saved for next season.
Yeah.
But you've heard of the transition from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. But have you heard about Waldrig the Black? Maker of Mordor? And maybe that's what's coming out underneath the mountain. You were like, is this the Balrog? Is this the Watcher? You're like, no, this is Waldrig the Black. He's going to come out and he's going to be walking around the heart of something he cut out. And he's like, I call this dinner. And, just like an elf.
We're just saying, I think I brought it up. The Walking Dead, Daryl is a made up character, not from the original source material. The only character who has his own spin-off show that's been going on for over a decade now. Waldrig, made up character.
Waldrig the Black.
Waldrig the Black.
He's back and pissed. Oh.
AC/DC starts rolling in the background.
Back in Black. It starts super zoomed in on like kind of like turning the corner on being rotted meat, and it's zooming out, and then the moment you see a fly, a big cleaver flies down and chucks it off, and then you see a hand grab like a bone and pull it to his mouth, and then that's when the drums come in, right? It's just that rock, it's just like the riff, and then the moment that flesh of an almost rotting animal goes up to the mouth of Waldrig the Black, that's when like, back in black, hit us. That's when it comes in.
He just casually throws the bone to the wolves, and they're just eating it.
Yeah, the one that everyone thought killed him.
Exactly.
He's like, Sauron told me to fake my death, because he's really Sauron. This is not. I don't want to. I'm not running sidekick for Adar when
If you're the Sauron.
like when you can go with the OG right there. Like who wants to mess with Sauron? It's like Sauron v Adar. He's just like a screwed up elf.
Minor characters.
He's trying to like lure Galadriel in and stuff. Adar, he's needy. He's like gonna capture and bring around. Sauron's just like, look, you wanted this piece. I'm Sauron. Do you want to rule with me or not? And then she's like, no. And he's like, peace. I'm out. I'm too proud to beg because I'm freaking Sauron. Adar's like, oh, let's talk in Elvish. I don't want the orcs to know I'm trying to get you to be my ally. And that's why Waldrick knows what's up. He's like,
He played the long game. He was inviting a Rondir into his bar the
yeah.
whole time, saw it coming. Like you said, Adar, what does he do? He's like, nobody likes me. I'm going to kill Sauron now. Announcing his stuff all over the place. Like, heck no. What?
If in the middle of this battle Waldrick comes in straddling a warg
Dude,
with meat cleavers,
I will be so happy.
one, because it's funny. Two, just because you know how triggering it would be to a certain population on the internet that like their complaint tweets would be great. You know, when in the Hobbit movies
Oh, yeah.
where like the other Ironfoot dwarves or whatever, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, they show up and you were like, if you thought dwarves were performatively Scottish before, just wait till you see these ones. They ride
CGI Billy Boyd. Or not Billy Boyd, what's his name? The comedian.
and the rams.
Riding the boar. Just crazy, dude.
They're like, you just watch this. All right. Well, do you think we got straight on like full-fledged battle? How quick in the next episode?
I think it's probably going to happen in the penultimate episode. I think we're going to get the motion of stuff because we only have 3 episodes left, and Gil-galad, at least on the source material, asks for help. Okay, for the sack of Eregion. So we still have to. That still has to happen.
D4. I feel like Gil-galad's going to send Elrond, so we get an Elrond D4. Durin the Fourth reuniting, and then Durin's going to be like, "And my axe," and because in the trailer you get the like "for our friends" or whatever Durin line.
Right.
I'm just like, come on, if he and Elrond start counting takedowns of orcs, you know, they're just like, we like doing these Peter Jackson shout outs. And Elrond's like, I want the table back you gave Disa. And he's like, all right, I'll give you a five head start. And
there's a lot, I think that would be the more fulfilling part, but in the source material, Gil-galad asked Numenor to come for this battle, and I could see that being a place because Numenor is going to pull a colonialism, and also Elendil's probably going to go, and that's his opportunity to find Isildur, and Arondir shows up, which we know Isildur's been with Arondir. So I'm thinking that Elendil and Isildur are probably going to reconnect at the sack of Eregion, and hopefully the dwarf, when things look bleak, Damrod's been snapping people in half, and then all of a sudden, D4 shows up.
He's going to have a big horn too. He's going to blow some horn. And what if those stone singers show up? Like, who needs a horn when Disa and company? It just like walks out. It's like, ah, and then the orcs are like, oh, I gotta make a confidence check, and they just start splitting out.
Yeah, they fail. They start internally combusting. Yeah.
They like sing at some balls and just roll them across enemy lines. They're like, all right. Well, we'll do this next week.
Heck yeah.
There's still 194 people on after the headset problem, so congratulations.
Yeah, thanks for waiting, everybody. Also, if you come back next week, not only will you get deep dives on the lore, but like you're gonna get pitches from Tripp and I on Waldreg spinoff series, and like we said, what could make a battle even cooler? Rolling, resonating balls.
Rolling, resonating balls.